Welcome to the Explainer. So, have you ever stopped and wondered what the internet is, actually made of? It seems incredibly complex, right? But what if I told you that pretty much every single website you've ever visited is built on just three core technologies? Today, we're going to break down that trinity, and we're going to use a simple analogy that I think you'll get right away. And it all kicks off with a question that, honestly, a lot of us have had. A son is trying to build a website for his car detailing business, but he's just stuck. He's looking at it and thinking, wait, there's like three different things here: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Why can't it just be one? And you know what? That's the perfect question. It gets right to the very heart of how the web actually works. And the answer, believe it or not, is way more intuitive than you might think, especially if you think about how you'd build a classic car. Yep, a car. The three essential parts of any vehicle, you've got the frame, the body, and of course the engine, they give us the perfect mental model for the three languages that build the entire web. All right, let's get into it. We'll start with the most fundamental piece of the puzzle. I mean, before you can even think about having a car, you need a frame, right? It's the skeleton. It's what everything else gets bolted onto. And in the world of the web, that frame has a name: HTML. So, HTML, its one and only job is to provide pure, raw structure. Seriously, that's it. It doesn't care one bit about colors or fonts or making things like pretty. It just defines the parts. It says, okay, this bit here is a title, this chunk is a block of text, and this thing's an image. It's just like a car's frame, which basically determines where the engine's going to sit and where the wheels are going to attach. HTML just lays out the blueprint for a web page. And the origin story for HTML is actually pretty fascinating. You see, it was born out of a need for pure organization, not style. Way back in 1989, a guy named Tim Berners-Lee, a physicist at CERN, just wanted an easier way for scientists to share their research documents. He had this idea he called hypertext, and HTML was the simple language he cooked up to give it all a basic structure. It was all about function. And this is what that structure actually looks like in practice. See? It's pretty simple, almost like a set of basic instructions for the browser. That H1 tag, that's just telling the browser, hey, this is the main heading. The P tag says, okay, here comes a paragraph. And that A tag, well, that's what makes a link. That's all it is. It is the absolute bare bones frame of the page. But let's be real. A bare frame isn't much of a car, is it? And a web page that's just HTML, well, it's not much to look at either. So the next logical step is to give it a body. Maybe some cool paint, give it a unique look. And this is exactly where the second language of our Trinity comes into play. And this comparison just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the early web. It worked, sure, but visually, it was all the same. Kind of bland, if we're being honest. But on the right, that's the web we all know today, bursting with design and personality. The technology that makes that huge leap possible, that's CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it is the language for all things aesthetic. Think of it as the body panels, the candy apple red paint job, the shiny chrome trim on our car. It was actually created because people got really tired of every website looking the same, and they started doing these weird hacks with HTML to add style. It was a total mess. CSS was the solution. It completely separated the structure from the presentation. And here's basically how it works. A CSS rule, like this one, targets that H1 heading we saw in our HTML and gives it some simple instructions. It says, hey, heading, you need to be this specific shade of dark blue, and I want you to use the Georgia font. What's so cool about this is, by keeping all these style rules in a separate file, you can change the entire look of a website just by editing that one file. Super powerful. Okay, so now we've got a frame and a body. We've got structure and we've got style. Our website is looking great, but it just sits there. It's like a beautiful show car that can't actually move. We need an engine. And that engine is JavaScript. This is the third and final piece of our Trinity. You see, JavaScript is the language of behavior. If anything on a web page moves or reacts to you or changes without you having to load a whole new page, you can bet that's JavaScript at work. The story behind JavaScript is just wild. So back in 1995, the browser company Netscape realized that these static, brochure-like pages just weren't cutting it. They needed interactivity. So they gave an engineer named Brendan Eich a basically impossible deadline: create a brand new programming language for the web in just 10 days. 10! And he did it.
That frantic 10-day sprint produced the language that now powers literally everything from pop-up menus to massive applications like Google Docs.
And this little snippet gets to the core idea. The code is basically telling the browser to just sit and listen for a specific action. In this case, it's listening for a click on something called the menu button. When that click happens, boom, it triggers a response, like opening or closing a menu. It's this cause and effect relationship that really makes a website feel alive and interactive. Now, that classic separation, frame, body, engine, that is the fundamental truth. It's the foundation. But if you're a car person, you know that modern cars aren't really built that way anymore. They use what's called a unibody, where the frame and the body are fused into a single integrated piece. And guess what? The web has had a very similar evolution. Right, so in the classic model, you had three totally separate files for your structure, your style, and your behavior. But today, developers use these modern tools called frameworks. And these let them build in what are called components, where all three languages for one piece of a page, say a search bar, can all live together. This makes building really complex interactive sites way more efficient. Though, yeah, it can sometimes be harder to see where one language ends and the next one begins. But, and this is the most important part, here's the crucial point. No matter how fancy the framework is, no matter how complex the tools get, when it's finally time to show you that web page in your browser, everything gets compiled or broken back down into those same three original languages. Your browser only understands one thing: plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The Trinity always endures. And that brings us right to our key takeaway. This right here, this is your mental model. HTML is the frame. It gives everything its structure. CSS is the body and the paint. It handles all the presentation, how things look. And JavaScript is the engine. It drives all the interactivity. With just these three concepts, you can basically understand the fundamental architecture of any website you ever visit. So we now know how a web page is built. But what's actually happening in those few milliseconds between you typing a web address into your browser and hitting enter and that page magically appearing on your screen? Well, join us next time as we trace that incredible journey from your keyboard across the world to a server and all the way back again.